G'day, guys. Welcome to Superchargers. I'm Daniel Thomas. Thank you so much for tuning in. My guest on this episode is author and filmmaker Mariam Elhouli. Mariam is over in Melbourne, my hometown, and her journey is one of courage. She's written the award-winning book, The Olive Tree, and we had an awesome chat. So enjoy this one. Let's go. Where did it all begin for you?
Well, I'm Australian born and raised, but raised in Melbourne. And as I said before to you, in Williamstown, Newport, that's where we grew up. I'm the oldest out of 10. We were 9
Wow.
girls and a boy in between us. Big family, we were Lebanese background. So although Australian, our parents migrated in the 80s from Lebanon. It was war-torn country. So I don't know why and I always ask, why'd they pick Australia out of all the European countries close to Lebanon? 2 hours away. Why did you have to travel 20 hours on the other side of the world? But that's where they landed. So I grew up in a big household, extended family, chaotic, I think is the word to describe it. And then at 15, I decided that I was going to get married and leave the house.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a big wow. Yeah.
That's extraordinarily young. Yeah. And
it is, but it is.
But having 9 siblings, was it sort of when you say chaotic, was it sort of a first in, first served approach, like you had to fight it to get to the dinner table?
Yeah, you know what? That's now in hindsight, that was the fun days. Yes, it wasn't a fight, but everything was first in, first dressed, I guess. We had a lot of extended family from overseas live with us. Anyone that had problems in their life in the area came and lived with us. So I always say we were like the Salvation Army for the community.
Well, I like the notion that it like takes a village to sort of raise a family and stuff. I love that sense of community. Yeah. So the fact you're bringing everyone in, but it no doubt added to the chaos.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you married, you obviously left home. That's like a dramatic left turn, right?
Well, put it in this way, Daniel, growing up in a burning house, you think everyone else is exactly like you. And being the oldest, I was supposed to be raised textbook by my parents because, I'm the oldest. All the experiments came out in me. The rules, the regulations, everything was forbidden. It was just, and I didn't agree with their way of life. But then again in hindsight, how much do you know as a 15-year-old to take such a decision? But that's the way it was. And in our community, in our religion, you can't leave home unless you're married. So for me, I didn't see any way out other than this way. I met my husband, he was 19 overseas, and I remember coming and saying to him, you know what, I'm going to marry this guy. And my mum just went wild. You're an A student. They were hoping I was going to become the next top surgeon. I was going to take the family from left to right, but I just wanted out. And for me, I couldn't see a way out other than this road that I was going to go on, which I did. I stuck to my guns and said, this is what I want. This is what I'm going to do.
It's sort of interesting because you sort of followed the rules to break the rules in a way.
Yes. Yes. You could be liberal as much as you want, but I knew even then, and I'm telling you 20 years ago, I'm 35 now, 20 years back in Australia, communities or ethnic communities were very, very strong-minded. So you really, doesn't matter how much leeway you thought you had, there is still some, things that you couldn't really change.
Mm.
And leaving home for a girl or for a boy, even for a girl, was a big no-no. That would have brought shame to the family.
Right. Yeah. So it was kind of call it a bit of a rebellious act in a way.
Yes, absolutely.
And then where did it go from there?
So I left, I married in Lebanon because I was underage in Australia. No sane judge would allow a 15-year-old to get married. So I moved there for a while. I came back to Australia. I had my first son at 16, Yosef. Then I went back to Lebanon. And this is where the U-turn, I think, happens, or where life gets very interesting. When I was 17 and I was in Lebanon with a 9-month-old, Israel and Lebanon got into a 2006 mega war. Now, on the back of that war, we had to be evacuated by the Australian government through Cyprus via boats. So my 20-year-old husband, my 17-year-old self, and my 9-month-old were evacuated to Cyprus. From Cyprus, we came to Sydney, and then we were put back into Melbourne. And I think that's the beginning of my life's journey, and changing completely my life 360 after going through the first war.
That's fascinating that you left Australia and then there was conflict and war, and then you had to return to where you were from in a sort of fleeing situation.
Yeah, and you know what I learned, and this is where I think not only my love for literature began, but I think for seeing my life in a different perspective or different light. I learned then, because in Australia we're very privileged, although I didn't come from a very, rich family or highly educated family, but we're very privileged. No one's hungry in Australia, unless you're by choice. We're very privileged. We've got a roof over our heads. We're safe. Safety is such a big thing, a big commodity that our generation, or this generation, doesn't really understand. I understood then that the color of your passport deemed if you're worthy of saving or not, because I held a blue colored passport, my Australian passport, so I was worthy of being saved. But then everyone, the millions that were left behind, didn't hold a European or an Australian passport, so they were not worthy. So I understood for a very young age that there is no justice in this world.
Mm. Yeah, what a massive perspective shift to sort of be rescued out of there. It's pretty crazy. I must say, like, growing up in multicultural Melbourne, I loved it. Like high school, I played for like a Greek soccer team, and actually my dad made a film about that club, and that film sort of reflected multicultural Melbourne more than being, it was a soccer story, but it was about celebrating Melbourne's multiculturalism. So I grew up in that, and then coming to Germany, I was profoundly moved here in the 2015 refugee crisis, because I had come from a country, our home, where refugees are put in detention, and then here in Germany, the borders were open and primarily Syrian refugees were being welcomed. And then I went on to make friends with these guys and just saw how much life they were bringing to the community. But obviously it was also faced with some backlash. So I just find it interesting with you. And we have these, I think, leaving home, when you leave Australia, our sort of comfortable, safe island, as you say, and then you leave home, there's no turning back, in a kind of metaphorical sense, in the terms of it clearly changed your entire life trajectory from having that experience. And it's awesome that you gained that perspective of like compassion,
Absolutely. In Australia, we're very, I say cotton wool, if we're going to use the term. We're very in our own bubble. We're very laid back. Yes, we've been very generous as a nation, very caring and giving. We definitely are. But on the other spectrum, we have no idea what the real world is, or what's going on in the real world, other than what we see from the media, which is unfortunately 3/4 of it, politicized or fake or whatever you want to call it. But we've got no idea. So seeing any country for that matter, the difference is just, it's like a slap in your face. Australia is so much, and I'm so grateful, but for growing up here and for my kids growing up here. But when you're hit with reality, it's like you come from a different universe.
Yeah, and it's hard to, once you come home, it's hard to kind of get that across, or for people to understand. So did you
Yes,
then,
absolutely.
yeah, did you then study literature after that experience, after you fled
So
Lebanon?
from coming back to Australia, I sat with myself and said, I am not going to leave what I ran away from. I am going to change my life, and whatever it's going to take, since I made this decision to have this child and then later on my children, I'm gonna do something for myself. So I put myself back into. I went back to nursing, which I had done beforehand before I left Australia, but the shifts and the times and everything didn't work out. So I went back to. I've always loved writing. I've always had a passion for it, but I think that trauma that I lived at that time, which I wasn't aware of it, led me down the path of, you know what, I'm going to study major in literature and composition. Mind you, it took me a decade, 10 years to finish that degree because I have 5 kids in between having children, doing other diplomas, opening and failing in 1,000,001 businesses. I finally completed it because the university said, we're going to kick you out. 10 years is the max. So if you don't finish your damn degree, you're out.
But wow, five kids. I've often said, like, if you could stay at because uni's a wonderful place, but yeah, it's like
I was online. I wish I had the experience to even go. I was just
ah,
online. There was no way I can
plus
drag 2, 3, 4, 5 kids down the line of university with me. But I studied at night, all hours of the day, and that's why it took so long, because it was just, you know, nearly impossible with the kids being so young to finish. But I finished it finally.
but having kids as young as you were, and you know, that's a hard enough challenge as it is, but then trying to do that and then having to flee a country, like, yeah, it's a big game changer. So um
And just to add a bit of sprinkle for you, I actually then got caught up in another 2 or 3 civil wars in Lebanon by chance years later with a couple of my children. And I kid you not, the civil war is 10 times worse than 2 countries bombing each other because your enemy is your neighbor that you saw
mm,
last week, or the person you saw at the coffee shop, or your own. Some people with their own brothers, their own families, because they followed a different political side. So that again in itself, you know, made me more, if I'm going to go down the literature side, see so many stories and witness so many things that it feels like sometimes when I tell people, they say, is this a movie or is this real?
mm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, when it's at your front door and your neighbors, that's an intense
Yeah.
environment. Yeah.
Mm.
And so all that fed into writing your first book, The Olive Tree. And
Yes.
it's
So
and it's it's fiction, but is it drawn from your own experiences?
Um, yeah, so the olive tree was written 3, 4 years before I even published it because when COVID came, that was a big light bulb moment for me in all aspects of my life. But for my writing, especially, I made the conscious decision that, you know what, life's too short. I don't know what's going to happen in this world. Let me get it out there. So, yes, it is fiction, but my style of writing is fiction with a purpose. So any book that I, you know, am writing or write has to have a big message behind it. I don't think the world needs more romance or more, you know, crap that we already have. We need purpose. We need to be able to put down a book or a movie and say, "Oh, let's debate. What do you see from your perspective? What do I see from my perspective?" So yes, although fiction, it does a lot of the small stories, things I've seen or things I personally went through. Hence, the feedback I've always gotten was, "Is this real? Like, are you sure this is fiction?" Well, yeah, it is. But fiction is reality anyway.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. Any projects I'm involved in as a writer, filmmaker as well, it's like, what are we trying to say? What's the bigger message here? And if we're not trying to say anything or trying to give a clear point of view, like you, I don't really see the point. I mean, those other genres and stuff, they serve their purpose, but what are
Absolutely.
we really trying to say here, and how is that driving the thing? Sometimes it's easier said than done, but you clearly have a unique perspective from your experiences and what you've seen and what you've been through. So the fact that you can offer those through storytelling is just awesome. It's like with horror and stuff. I never understand horror. Like, people love it, but I just think there's enough violence in the world. I just don't get it.
Yeah, me too. I'm not a fan at all of horror, and I'm like you. I don't understand what do you get out of it?
Yeah,
But you know, each to their own. But yeah, I can't wrap my head around why I want to sit for 2 hours being scared.
exactly. Yeah, some people get a kick. That's fine. But so did you self-publish The Olive Tree, or was that through a publisher?
We went through a publisher, but I retained all rights to the book because I knew deep down in my heart that this book was going to go somewhere. Mind you, everyone told me, because I was in business before putting out this book, everyone told me that this book would amount to nothing. Like, who am I to write a book, because I had done so many other things, you know, as being a mum and a business owner, etc. And I, deep in my heart, I knew there was some place for this book. So when this book won awards and you know, was bestseller a few times, it was on the New York billboards, in magazines, I sort of knew that, okay, this book is going to be destined for something big. So thank God I have all royalties and all rights and everything, and not just the monetary side of it. That when you have a message, that's, you don't really make money out of movies or books. I hope people do understand that it's again the message, but I have the rights to the message because I have a vision for of how I want to portray it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Yeah, you gotta watch those voices of self-doubt. It's crazy when, you know, they can really you know, around you, even when you're so like driven yourself and people are just telling you you're crazy. It's, I think often like we hold mirrors up to people and it sort of perhaps confronts their own lack of trying something. But yeah, the more I've heard those voices, the more determined it's made me in a way, because I believe you can do this stuff anywhere. You know, I've been told in Germany that I'm crazy as an Australian pursuing certain artistic things, but it just drives me on. So it's great that that didn't throw you and you stayed on the path.
Oh, absolutely. I'm told on a daily basis I'm crazy. I put myself through. I got a big offer from one of the big production companies, and they wanted to change the story and make it about politics or religion and everything else, when it's not. The story is about two girls, different faiths, and how life entwines them together, and how they fight bigotry and violence, and all they want at the essence of it is to live. Because all through these experiences, I learned something really important. Children pay the ultimate price in any war. That's the bottom line. Doesn't matter what their skin color is, what their religious background is, what their ethnicity is, and no amount of psychological help when they're adults is going to fix the trauma that they've been put through as children. And I'm sick and tired of hearing men in suits try to make peace for us when peace should be created in the homes. It's from a young age. You don't teach your child hatred. You teach them inclusivity. You teach them to be loving and have a safe environment for them. That's the only way we're gonna get out of this hole that they put us in. And I say they because it's the men in suits. How many times have you seen women or mothers initiate a war? From history, I don't think there's any.
Yeah, it seems part of humankind that for some reason just whether it's greed or power. But you're absolutely spot on. Like peace starts at home.
So
And
when Absolutely. So when this company came back with, and by the way, it was a big monetary offer, and I had $0, but I said no. I put myself through film school, and I said if this is gonna fruit, and the message is gonna come out, then I need to know how I'm how the earth am I going to get this movie out there. So I put myself through film school and to become a director. And I finished a couple, maybe 7, 8 months ago. I finished, and now we're in the works of the script is nearly done. We're just tweaking some things, and then we'll cast soon. And hopefully you'll see very soon the olive tree on the screens.
oh, amazing to do film school after the 10 years of literature. It's very inspiring that you've smashed through that. And yeah, writing, directing. You know, the thing is, you're so clear about the story and you know the pure nature of it that yeah, that's really exciting that it's in that pre-production phase at the moment, and that's through a production company.
No, I'm opening my own production company.
You've started your
I'm
own.
doing.
Awesome.
We're starting our own. Oh yeah, I'm gonna put this from A to Z, just because every time you approach someone, everyone wants to make the story not what it. And as I said, I'm not interested in this movie becoming the next blockbuster to rake in millions for a producer, or to all I'm after is let's share the message, as artistically as possible without being vulgar, without taking sides, even without any of that. We just talk about the essence of what the project is, and let's have a conversation. All I want is for us to be able, as humans, as adults, to have a conversation and to hear each other, because we speak but no one hears the other person.
Exactly. I found that with this show, it's an exercise in listening. Listening's like it's a muscle that we don't use so much, and it's just so important just to listen, especially in this day and age with all the noise around us. Um, yeah, it's a powerful message. So, is it going to predominantly be shot in Australia?
Not all of it, because we're trying to replicate the Middle East, not scenery, but the houses and the lifestyle. So we're thinking the ideal place would be for me to go back to Lebanon, where we've got family and I can do it easily. But I think Lebanon's on the brink of another war, so that's out of the question. So we're thinking Sicily, Italy, maybe. I've been told
Uh,
that that's very close replica, but I don't know yet. I haven't got to the past of where are we going to shoot yet. But I'm hoping it's Italy, Sicily, maybe, as I was told. We need to have a look at the geography of it, and then some of it in Australia. Yes, definitely.
yeah, cool. No, I mean like you say, the message is it's the most important thing there. Yeah, it's a challenge on the show to have guests offer some kind of it's a tradition on the show to have guests offer some kind of challenge to listeners. This could be anything, given your experiences or what we've been talked about or what we've been talking about. Perhaps it could even be about having these conversations and listening. Is there anything that springs to mind that somebody could try, like on a daily basis, to help their life in any way?
I think the ideal thing would be to say travel, but I know it's unrealistic, because I know traveling opens your mind to things that you never really thought you'd see, cultures, religions, languages. It's so, like, travel for me has changed. I just came back from a London and Paris trip, and even, London's an English speaking country. I found big differences in our culture, in our Australian culture, and in London, Britons, how they interact with each other. So, and if that's hard for people, you need to read. I can't believe this day and age, a lot of people have lost the ability to read, because that's the next best thing if you can't travel. And read, don't just read things that interest you. I think you need to start reading from other cultures, books from other cultures, whether it's translated, other subjects that don't really interest you, so you can become not an expert, but you can become multi-layered individual when someone talks to you. I don't think at the day and age we need to get our information from news, TikTok, and Instagram and Facebook. I think a lot of people are relying on the basic information from these platforms. And it really shows. It really shows when you meet people. It really shows when you're trying to have a conversation or a debate. People are just, they're very narrow in their thinking.
And one of the problems with the platforms is it feeds you the information that you want, so you're not actually getting those alternative. It's really strange times.
It's very biased. Absolutely.
Yeah, because it's giving you your own bias. So it's like, well, what are you learning or being challenged if you're not getting a filter? It's I find it really, really, really strange. But yeah, taking it back to literature, yeah, but travel is an awesome one. Like, to go full circle, I left Australia with a rock band and spent time in London, and London was like a very transient, multicultural place also. And I met people from all over the world who spoke 8 or 9 languages. And then as soon as I got back to Australia, the first or second day, I experienced a fight in a bar and some racism at a barbecue. And I was just like, I love Australia, as we've said, but I had spent this time in London surrounded by all these different cultures. And as soon as I came home, I was privy to some pretty backward sort of stuff. And it was just kind of span me out, because I was very different, but not much to change at home. So this travel, and then to end up in Germany now, where English is not the first language, it's a foreign country, and been here over 10 years, and every day there's just still things that spin me out culturally. But
Can I
it
ask, racism? Do you get much racism as an English speaking white man, I guess? Do they really, or is it just if you look different, you really caught the racism there?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I feel I have had some difficulty, and I've never felt, why would I complain? I'm a middle-aged white dude, right? I can't imagine uh how bad it can be for minorities. So I'm like, who am I to say, hey? But no, I've had some real challenges here, and sometimes that has played a part. There's just a lot of traditional stuff here. It's kind of hard to there's such heavy bureaucracy here. It's kind of hard to break into that. But I've just had to learn the lay of the land. But it's taken me a solid 10 years. Whereas in London, it's an English speaking country. You can just pick up a life pretty easy within a few months. But Germany's a bit of a different beast. But at the same time, I've loved it. Like I say, when they opened the borders and welcomed refugees with open arms. I have some very inspiring stories from friends, and I was just blown away by their journeys across Europe. I was just absolutely floored by what they had been through. I came here comfortably on a plane, and when I first came here and I was struggling, I was just entitled to welfare because I had a British passport. It's like you say the color of the
Makes a big difference,
passport
doesn't it?
makes a huge difference. And
Does.
but
Very sadly, yes.
but even with that, when Brexit happened, I had to fight for my rights here, and it was the first time I'd ever, because I have a son here. With Brexit, there was no guarantee. There was no guarantee that I was going to be able to stay and stuff, and nobody could give me answers. And I was getting angry at Germany, but really it was Britain who wasn't giving Germany the answers. And I had to fight for my right to stay here. And I just never thought I would have had this perspective again as a middle-aged white dude, right? But no, I've had those struggles here, so I can very much relate. But I haven't been, it's very safe in Germany. I haven't been in a surrounded by a conflict situation, except at the supermarket where people are yelling at me sometimes.
Well, they're first world problems. I hope that's the biggest problem you're going to ever face.
Exactly.
When my sisters or something, someone friends tells me something, I just say we have first world problems.
Yeah.
Believe me, guys, whatever you have problems are first world problems. If we're going to compare it to the billions of people living in other countries, you are totally fine. If your perfume finishes or your cream finishes or whatever finishes in the house, there is always a tomorrow or a next pay, whereas the entire world is not that fortunate. So hopefully the supermarket thing is going to be just the worst nightmare for you moving forward.
No, you're
Look,
right.
it's really interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting, Daniel, like what you just said about, you feel frustrated and you're a, educated person that's lived, in Europe, and then you to feel that like you're second class or you've got no answers it's really scary and really angers you. I
Mm.
feel you.
Yeah, and I had to turn that into I could kind of curl up in a ball, or with the similar, it sounds like you have a lot of fight and determination in you. I don't see you as someone who's just gonna. I'm similar in that. So I could either like curl up or just use it as growth. So it's kind of accelerated my sort of personal growth. Being in a foreign country where English is not the first language, and I never came here expecting to speak English. It's a very difficult language, and I've just struggled to kind of grasp it. But that's not without trying to put in the work. But yeah, I never came here just assuming, oh, everyone will just adapt to me. I came here to make a life in Germany. But yeah, it gives you a thick skin.
It does. And I've taken up Turkish as my third language for business, and I've traveled there so much, and it makes a big difference when I used to go before and not knowing a single word of Turkish. And then I understood what people felt like when they come to Australia, and we think that they're stupid. And being young in age, I just think these people are stupid that they're coming. They're not stupid. They just don't understand your language. But we perceive them as stupid. And I actually felt that feeling when I used to go and people just stare at me like, this idiot lady that's just come and has no idea. And then how I got treated later after I became sort of fluent in the language is a big, I don't know what, in people, they just respect you. The level of respect that you get when you speak their language and understand how, as you say, the law of the land, it's just like I was a different person, I guess, in a different land. So
Yeah,
it is really important to pick up the language.
yeah, it's crazy. But I just believe, there's a universal language which is unspoken, and we've all got the
Humans.
same. Doing this show, I've realized that we're far more alike than we are different, regardless of, and I find it fascinating our individual struggles, like you've had your journey, what they teach us, and then how we in turn use that, and the fact that you're using everything you've experienced and the tools that you have to try and get at some really important stuff. You're right. It's not about the money or whatever. It's about the message, and that's just awesome to see and hear about.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Is there anything we haven't sort of covered that you wanted to share? Where can people find you?
Instagram, Mariam.Elhouli, LinkedIn, Mariam Elhouli, my website, which will take you to my LinkedIn, mariamelhouli.com as well. But usually I'm really active on Instagram. And I do a lot of other things like public speaking and coaching, and not just the writing. That's just, I think, a layer of what I do. But I enjoy it all. And I hope one day our voices, not just mine and what you're doing as well, reaches millions around the world. And as you said, what unites us is far more greater than what divides us. And the universal language should be humanity. We're humans. I don't think anyone, if you ask around the world, do you want a crap life, that will tell you yes. We all have the same dreams and aspirations, especially as parents. We want our kids and the next generation to live peacefully. And I don't know what type of world we're going to leave if nothing changes.
Thanks for tuning in. If you have a guest suggestion, please reach out on my website at danthomas.net. I am also on social media at Mr. Dan Thomas. Catch you on the next episode.